All right, be with you shortly.
Good morning. I'm here with Police Chief Teresa Theetge, City Manager Sheryl Long, and Councilmember Scotty Johnson. 2 weeks ago, we convened this group to discuss the unacceptable spike in crime that we've experienced throughout our communities during the start of our summer, as well as our strategies to combat that spike. It is our commitment not to just implement every tool we have to prevent crime, but also to make sure our residents are frequently updated on our status and strategies. As part of that, I'm once again here with our police chief to discuss and update our community on Cincinnati's crime statistics, the initial progress of the new Street Crimes Task Force, and our targeted areas of focus. When we last held this press conference, homicides had risen, property crimes had spiked, and especially concerning, gun thefts from cars we're putting more firearms onto our streets. We know that these types of crimes are not only harmful to the vibrancy of our urban core and all affected neighborhoods, but they can also contribute to more violent crime throughout our communities. Addressing and proactively targeting these street-level crimes has been the central charge of the task force, and I want to thank every officer that has signed up to take on this incredibly important work. It is early in their work. It's been 2 weeks since we announced the task force, roughly a week for them being at full strength. But it's important all the same to publicly discuss the promising progress that we've seen and to reaffirm that we are not going anywhere until every community can feel safe. Public safety is the only issue that we are focused on right now in City Hall. All of us working very hard to deploy creative and disruptive strategies to break up this unacceptable rise in crime. And we will continue to do so, and we will continue to deploy new strategies if and when that is needed. That's our responsibility as city leaders, and we will continue to be here for frequent updates of our work. Up next, I'll welcome Chief Teresa Theetge, followed by City Manager Long.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming out and joining us today. So I'm going to walk you through some pretty concise data. We just met 2 weeks ago, and to show our commitment to transparency, we will bring you back on a repeated basis to share our progress. Hopefully each time we'll be sharing good news. So we'll go ahead and get started with this, Amanda. So this is a chart that we use. This is the 28 days that ended 6/21, so just before our last press conference, 28 days prior to. This is some of the information that really showed us concern of the reason why we needed to create the task force, why we needed to start reporting out more frequently on our efforts, again, as a level of commitment to transparency. This is the last 28 days, so there's a little overlap. The last one ended on 6/21. This one begins 6/8 and ends 7/5. So there's a little bit of overlap there, but this is the most recent 28-day data information. And as you can see there, we've got some reductions. We still have some work to do, but we've got some reductions. We still have 3% reduction in violent crime citywide and a 6%, over 6% reduction citywide violent crime on the 3-year average. So we still are trending in the right direction. So here's the same time frame, 6/8 to 7/5, talking about the data itself. So our Part 1 property crimes, which as you can see are the burglaries, B&Es, auto thefts, thefts from auto, and the concentrated area there with the density map. And again, the Part 1 violent crime. Here's where we talk about, when I did my year-end stats, we talk about, yeah, we have neighborhoods that have the data shows us are violent, but it's not an entire neighborhood. We drill down sometimes on the street segments. That's what's important to us. Not that a neighborhood is dangerous, but a street segment is where we need to focus our efforts. Good. So this one is quite similar to the one that you guys got 2 weeks ago, but we wanted to include some of the efforts that we formalized as we move forward for the summer, and that is our street crime task force, our implementation of drones into our overall strategy, and also increasing the public awareness through our PIO office. And for that piece, I would encourage your viewers, your listeners, to go to our website, see what our PIO is posting about crime in our neighborhoods, crime in our city, and oftentimes there are asks from the community. That's where they can figure out how they can help us by looking at that. Okay, so this is the specifically shootings and homicides. As you can see, we are still down just shy of 20% for the year and just over 23% for the 3-year average. I'm going to step out in front of the mic for a second because I want to show you guys something I think is pretty important. So you all know we have the city is divided in central business sections in 4 districts. That data is easy to calculate for us. This unknown here is quite often a shooting victim that goes to one of the hospitals in our city limits, Children's, UC, mostly. So year to date we've had 5 where we don't know where the shooting happened because they're not cooperating with us. Maybe we did not have a shot spotter alert to correlate to it, but that's a 4% increase. We carry those reports because they were reported at the hospital, which happens to be in the city limits. But we don't know the shooting happened. It might have been outside the city limits. But we have to report it, we have to track it, and so until we can determine where it happened, we own it. We own it. And you can see that's a tremendous increase. So the shooting incidents, 24 to 25. Here's something that is significant to note. Is us in law enforcement, this is a bit concerning to us. 17.5% of our shootings incidents year to date have involved more than 1 victim. And when we track this data, you guys are used to us reporting out, here's how many incidents we've had, here's how many victims we've had. And you know, we could have an incident such as Main Street last year, a year or 2 ago. You could have one incident that could have 4, 5, 6, 7 victims. That really plays a difference in our data. So this is the same information graphed out. You've got the juvenile data as well as the adults. If you look at the dark blue line, the 2025 data, you can see the dotted line. We're not ready to say July has been amazing. What we know is we've had a good first week of July, okay? But we don't know what the rest of July is going to bring to us. So hopefully in weeks when we report out to you again, obviously we'll have more July data for you, but we're tracking it now. So specifically for the Street Crimes Task Force, these are the neighborhoods based on data where they have focused their efforts. And this based on data, this is the crime, types of crimes that they are focusing on, preventing. Part 1 crimes, the burglaries and B&Es, theft from autos, auto thefts. So you can see that there. Here's some wins for the task force. So they have, keep in mind, they have been in full force for 1 week. They were kind of part-time since the last time we met with you. They were finishing up their duties in their districts. Now they're together full force. 53 arrests. 60% were drug-related. This is not a drug task force. However, we know from experience a lot of our crime stems from drug activity. So if they can get in there and interrupt that crime, potential crime, by doing drug arrests, that's a great way to stop the crime. And 25% of their arrests were firearms related. There's just way too many guns on our street. That's across the country. That's not just here. 12 firearms they've recovered. 2 of them were confirmed stolen. Right? So at the bottom down here, you'll see the 4 juveniles have been arrested. This firearm that you see pictured here, one's a close-up. It's the same firearm in both photos. That was taken off of an adult, and we'll give you more information on that here in a moment. That was not taken off of a juvenile. But do you see what's on the back of the firearm there? That's one of those switches we've talked about in the past. Turns a semi-automatic firearm into an automatic firearm. And I don't know about you guys, I've seen videos, especially this last week, from things happening in cities across this country. When you think about putting a regular firearm in somebody's hand who has no training, that's a recipe for disaster. Now you put a firearm with a switch on it into somebody's hand who has no training, that just kind of doubles the disaster.
Does that 53 include the 4, or are those separate? The 53 total is
that includes it. It's all inclusive. Yep. So this here is just a couple of the recoveries that they made. Again, I'm going to step out. On 6/27, 9 p.m., they made an arrest for a theft from auto. Suspects were on a red bike. Here's a tool that they had on their person when we arrested them. That's made to smash out a window. You lock yourself out of your car, maybe you need one. It has legitimate purposes, but for us and for the task force, you know, that leads us to believe they were using it for ill intent. Again, recovery of a stolen firearm, 7/2. That was stolen on March 25. So that gun has been out on our streets for several months. Who knows what it's been involved in? We will figure that out through our CJ. And another one, stolen firearm, recovered at a traffic stop. So the gun that we showed you with the switch on it, they said the guy was 18 years old. This is drone footage from that arrest, from what prior to the arrest. You can see he pulls it out, tucks it under his armpit. We believe, based on this footage, they were downtown. This is near the 4th and Sycamore area, that they were recording themselves, potentially making a video or something to post to social media.
I was going to say, that looks like Fountain Square, but that's not Fountain Square.
It's 4th and Sycamore. Yeah. So just give you a little background here. You can tell this is drone footage. Drone was able to zoom in, gets really good footage for us. The reason the drone was there, the reason we were able to stop this guy, recover the firearm, because it came as a result of a traffic stop after he left the 4th and Sycamore area. A citizen called this into us, some suspicious behavior. That is our biggest ask to the community. Call us when you see something you just think is not right, and we will be happy to go and investigate it.
Are we able to see that one more time?
Sure. Can you play that again, Amanda?
Chief, what was the crime that was observed in this drone footage? Carrying a weapon and showing a weapon is not.
Yeah. No, but we do have a right to stop somebody for suspicious activity, and that's what the officers.
Carrying a gun was suspicious activity.
Well, if he's down at 4th and Sycamore and a citizen calls us in to investigate suspicious activity, we have an obligation to look into that.
I'm asking what the suspicious activity is.
It is what the, no, it is what, I don't know what the citizen said when they called us, but whatever they told us brought us to the area, and the officers have a duty to act on the citizen's call. This is some drone footage. This is just a little bit to show you how impactful the drones could be. This is the spotlight from the drone down at Smale Park after closing hours for the park. They are able to highlight individuals and through a PA system let them know the park is closed, they need to leave the park. I will tell you this, that just in the little over a week that the drones have been partnering with the task force and with others as an asset to be used, the officers are just raving about the benefits of having the drone, raving about it. Kind of jokingly, one of them said, can we get about 50 more of them? So the drones are going to prove to be, I'm very confident they're going to prove to be a very strong asset as we move forward, even with our DFR. Okay, this is our theft from autos. Again, you can see the dotted line. We're not ready to say July is going to be a good month, but the first week of July was a good week. You can tell by the data here where the numbers dropped. This is citywide thefts from autos, not to be confused with auto thefts, because we usually report out about Kia and Hyundais when we're talking auto thefts. This is thefts from autos. So of our 250 plus theft from autos, you can see there was approximately 36 of them involved Kia and Hyundais. And the same number, 250 plus, 34 of them had firearms stolen from the vehicles. 34 firearms in a 28-day period. That's why our messaging about, first and foremost, please don't bring your gun, but if you are going to bring it, please secure it, strongly secure it in your vehicle so that it cannot be stolen. Go ahead, Amanda. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager before we take questions.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor and Chief Theetge, for this thorough update and for walking us through where we are at this current moment in the summer. CPD has been working around the clock to turn the tide and keep all of our residents safe, and as city manager, I have their backs 100%. Just like at our last conference, I want to state that no level of violence is acceptable. No one should be victimized or fear being victimized while simply enjoying the summer in our great city. Concerning and difficult trends like we're seeing now are the top priority for my administration as we move through the warm weather months. In addition to what you've heard from the Mayor and Chief, I want to share and offer details on some of the key interventions we're using to reduce violence. First, I'd like to address the decision to restrict the use of red bike and e-scooters overnight. As you know, we enacted these restrictions over the 4th of July holiday weekend from Thursday through Saturday night to address concerns about these bikes and scooters being used to commit crimes, easily escape from the police, or create unsafe and chaotic situations in large groups of people. When I sat down with CPD Task Force to ask what we could do to help them, the idea was top of mind. Unfortunately, the ease with which people can use the bikes and scooters has a compounding effect on the types of crimes we're combating. They are being used to more effectively commit property crimes, steal guns, and create quality of life issues. They themselves are not the issue, nor are the vast majority of people who ride them safely, but they become a useful tool for criminals intent on causing harm. CPD offered the restriction as a possible solution, and with where we're at right now, I'm happy to test ideas and see what they are worth. What we've seen in the first weekend of restrictions was a success in eliminating the types of incidents police have struggled with. So I'm announcing that we'll continue to restrict the bikes and scooters this upcoming weekend as well, on Friday and Saturday night from 8 p.m. until the following morning at 6 a.m. As we stated last week, we'll continue to assess on a week-to-week basis if we're getting the results we want. I've been in contact with Red Bike leadership along with the mayor to offer support as they explore innovative technology upgrades to better ensure the bikes are not misused. These type of evidence-based policing innovations are one component of the larger Act for Cincy initiative, officially launched in January of this year. Act for Cincy is a comprehensive violence reduction blueprint that emphasizes collaboration with police, non-police city departments, and outside partners to tackle the root cause of crime. The Act for Cincy umbrella also includes street-level problem-solving projects, mental health and trauma-informed care initiatives, and emphasis on safe firearm storage and more. To close, I'd like to offer my sincere thanks to everyone working tirelessly to address the increase in violence. Not just the mayor, council, and Chief Theetge, but every single police officer, as well as our public safety employees and fire and ECC. And what Act for Cincy shows us is that everyone has a role to play in reducing violence. So my thanks goes out to the city employees in rec and law, at BNI and parks and DPS and our external partners who are out here doing the work to increase positive outcomes and reduce violence and trauma in our neighborhoods. Finally, I have to reiterate one thing. Lock up your guns, and even better, leave them at home. But if you bring firearms downtown, it needs to be locked up and inaccessible. Every single weekend, guns are being stolen from cars. Every single weekend, those guns are used to commit crimes to cause harm. Do not be part of the problem. Do not leave your gun somewhere where it can be stolen in the blink of an eye. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief and City Manager. Now we'll take questions.
Real quick, Mayor or Chief,
Go ahead.
The Reds weren't in town this past weekend, and I'm just wondering, I saw the statistic on shooting incidents in the central business section were up pretty dramatically. I think I noted 62%, unless I can't see because I'm older. Is that when the Reds are away? I mean, is that really reflective of like outsiders coming in and parking downtown, and then they have, kids are breaking into cars or whatnot, or that can lead to shooting incidents? What does that say to you, I guess, is why this central business section, does it seem to be a magnet right now for shooting incidents?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's a direct correlation between when the Reds are in town versus when they're not. I understand the question there. I think it is more a result of criminals being successful in breaking into cars and looking for guns, and also the density of parking downtown where they can hit several targets in a very short amount of time, and in some instances using red bikes and scooters in order to effectuate that crime even more efficiently. I think that has more to do with it than whether a team is in town or not. Frankly, there's a delicate balance between having people out on the street versus having too many people out on the street. But the more people you have on the street is counterintuitive, but there's more safety, there's more eyes on the ground, there's more people looking out for each other. But again, I think it's more to do with the amount of cars that criminals can get into with respect to the actual break-ins. With respect to the gun violence that we see, it's rooted in different reasons, right? The number one reason is everyone has a gun. Or at least too many people have a gun. And so different motives occur with gun violence, of course, but it's no longer the gun violence of the past, or it was directly and almost uniquely specific to the drug trade. Now it is, unfortunately, far more expansive. What we see a lot of is two people getting into an argument, whether road rage or whether someone disagrees about who's dating whom, these personal disagreements. And because both parties have a gun, instead of a fist fight or an argument, it turns into mortal violence. James?
Follow up on that. Overall, it does seem like the violent crime isn't much in the Central Business District. It's in over the Rhine. It's in looking at the statistics, at least from the last one I saw on the 20th. Yet I know we talked about this last time. There's the perception that downtown is not safe. How do you think these kinds of stats are going to change anybody's mind that downtown is getting safer?
Changing people's mind is definitely an aspect of why we do this, but the more important reason we do this is transparency. So the public understands where we're deploying our public safety resources and how effective they are. We are deploying them where they are needed as reflected in the data. During the slide that the chief brought up with respect to the task force, there were several communities and neighborhoods on that list, not just the Central Business District and downtown. Look, I am not going to get into a perception argument. I think it is important that people's perception of downtown and of the city right now is that it's unsafe, and we should take that as a reality, irrespective of what the data says. And we should continue to double down on our strategies, and if we're not seeing positive decline in those data points, then we have to increase our strategies. We are committed to doing that. But what I don't want to get into is making decisions not based on what is effective and what the reality on the ground is, but based entirely on perception. Perception is an important part of this. We feel a lot of urgency. As I mentioned, this is the most important thing that we're doing, dedicating most of our time to. And I am optimistic, and our hope is that as we continue to see these numbers going down, the perception will also be improved. But again, the perception is important because violent crime and crime in general, as I've said several times, is our top priority. And the reason for that is, of course, the dignity of human life and the dignity of people feeling safe. But it's also incredibly important for our local economy. If that perception sets in that it's unsafe, then people will be less likely to come downtown or go to their neighborhood business district and spend money, which is a critical problem long term if that sets in.
Follow up for the chief. Is this task force using any other specific techniques or tactics differently or different than your general beat officers or, the ones that are just out patrolling? Are they doing anything differently, or are they just doing more of what you already do? Is there anything specific that they're doing that the other cops aren't doing on the street?
Yeah. So first of all, you got to compare it. Are you talking uniformed patrol officers? Because there's only so much they can do. They're very obvious when they're in uniform, roll up in a marked police vehicle, versus some of the task force are undercover officers. So there's more that they can do, different type of police work that they can do because they are undercover and undercover cars and such as that. So that's what this group brings, though, is the ability for them to shift. A mixture of uniformed and undercover, and whatever the hotspot is dictating, they have the ability to shift between the two. One of the things I wanted to point out, you saw up there that the Street Crimes Task Force has made 53 arrests, in essence, a little over a week. This is a group of 4 units, 4 VCSs that were brought together to form one larger unit. I don't know that if they would have been left in 4 districts and not been brought together as a whole, that we would have seen that number, 53. Because just like to the mayor's point, the more people you have anywhere, the safer they should be, more eyes, more ears. Same thing with the officers. There is a much better comfort level for them to go out knowing their safety is at a high level when they have more of them to do the work. So that is a significant part of bringing them together as a whole, is so that they can go out, do what we've asked them to do, and be comfortable that they can do it safely because they have the numbers to get it done. One other thing I want to touch on real quick before we have another question. You asked about like the reds and perception, and I do believe people's perceptions are their reality. That's where we all live. Part of the reason why we share this information with you on a regular basis is because this is where the community gets their information, from our local media most of the time. And so my ask is that you do responsible journalism, feed them the information. Sometimes the numbers might go up, sometimes the numbers might go down, but that is our avenue to, if we need to change somebody's perception and we can show that crime is down, that we use you as a conduit to get that done. So, not holding press conferences just for the sake of having a press conference to share the information. My hopes are that you then share it with the community so that they can create their own perception. And if we need to work harder to ensure their perception becomes that downtown is safe, that over the Rhine is safe, we will continue to work towards that end goal.
Follow up on that. Next, go ahead.
Becca?
How many drones are you currently using? Are you using all of the drones that you have at your disposal, and are you considering purchasing more drones?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when we kick off their drones first responder program later in July, because it's different than how we're using them now. But I'm going to take you, I think I did this a little bit, take you a little bit back in history. We have had drones for several years. Traffic unit can use it for the auto accident scenes. CJIC can use it. SWAT uses it. They've been using it for a while for SWAT operations. So we've been using drones for a while. What we're doing differently now is we are integrating them into this task force because we see the value in that. And then later we will take it a step further and use it as drones as a first responder. So to answer your questions, how many we have, I don't have the number off the top of my head. We probably have over a dozen or so. We have 3 that are dedicated to this program, this strategy. But that doesn't mean that traffic unit couldn't be out one day and assist with their drone as well. I just use that as an example. So would I like someday to even expand upon that? Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we kick off the drone as first responders, you'll get a little bit more glimpse into what that could look like for the city by year's end.
Chief, I was going to ask real quick. I've heard a little grumbling about this summer curfew that's in effect and the notion that uniformed officers might interact with a young person who's violating the curfew clearly, but there's the 2020 can't take them in necessarily, and they don't know what to do with them, and they try to get them to maybe Government Square or whatnot. What does that look like to you? Are there solutions on the horizon there, or is it just an interaction with a young person and saying you shouldn't be out this late, or how does that look?
Yeah, I will definitely ask the chief to respond as well. But the curfew has been a topic of conversation, not just this year, but in previous summers as well. And it's, you know, it's consistent with what we've been saying so far, which is that this is our current plan. The roving task force, the expanded use of drones, but that is not necessarily our only plan. I have asked the city administration and the chief to start considering what a curfew, the enforcement of a curfew would look like. Right now we do have a curfew. It's important to reiterate, but there are concerns with, to your point and to your question, how that would go. What are the logistics? Where do you take the kids? Where do you house the kids? We are currently thinking through some of those harder parts of it. But again, my commitment to the community is I'm as frustrated and as frankly angry as so many people in our community. And just like our intervention on red bikes, just like the current strategies that we have, if we believe we need to institute a curfew, we will do just that. And we are strongly considering it at this point, in addition to other interventions. But there are challenges with it, and we want to make sure that if we do it, we're doing it as effectively as possible.
Right,
Chief?
The curfew is basically in effect right now, but it's just the true nuts and bolts enforcement on the back end, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Just to reiterate, the curfew right now, it depends on age group, but for the I believe it's
15 and under 10 p.m.
15 under 10 p.m. and then 18 and under after midnight. 17 and under, excuse me.
Sorry, Todd, did you have?
I think that's good, Mayor. Yeah, that suits.
Okay.
I have a question, Chief. The ATF sent out an alert to offer a reward to stop the surge in violence. What other kind of assistance do you have to help the community get more involved in putting an end to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was made aware of that yesterday by the ATF, and I think that's phenomenal that they are stepping up financially to offer rewards. Sometimes that's the final piece that somebody needs to come forward is a financial reward. So that's awesome. I've also had some contact with state level law enforcement, have some upcoming meetings. They want to offer their assistance. It becomes a matter of how can they assist? What tools or resources do they have that could be integrated into our strategy that we've already developed? So.
Chief and Mayor, how would you categorize these early results? I mean, are you promising, cautiously optimistic? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I do want to get a sense for how you're seeing this. You showed the future trend if it follows, but how are you feeling after a week and a half of this implementation?
Yeah, so I'll make 2 points on that, James. One is I am thrilled with the work the officers are doing. My utmost gratitude to them for what they've been doing in just a little over a week. And not just the task force, but all the officers. Everybody's owning this. But to the other point, I'm a bit superstitious when it comes to talking about what's going on in police, especially when things are going well. So I'm going to leave that part unanswered.
Thank you, Chief. We are always somewhat hesitant, frankly, to provide data that is of such a small sample size because it is not necessarily indicative of a long-term trend. I want to make that very clear, just so there's no misunderstanding. But it is an accurate and true snapshot of a moment of time. And so I am thrilled that the snapshot right now is showing decreases and in some instances significant decreases, but we are not in a position to say after just a week of this task force being at full strength, we're not willing or ready to say projecting out how successful it'll be. However, I'm much happier that we're on this side of the trend as of last week, and we will continue to monitor this very closely and report out to you. And again, my commitment to the public is that it's not as if we put this task force together and just kind of wipe our hands clean and walk away. We are monitoring this day by day to make sure that the task force is effective, that it's going to the places it needs to go to, that it has the resources that it needs. And if we need to make adjustments, including more aggressive interventions that we've talked about, then those are still on the table. But we are encouraged by the current data and optimistic and hopeful that it will continue.
Case in point, you said the data went through, what, Saturday? There were a couple more shootings and a fatal shooting on Sunday.
Yep.
That aren't in there. So, you know, again, it's not necessarily, oh my God, one. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the task force is still out there. We are extending our restrictions on red bike next weekend. This is not an instance of us saying this problem is solved. This is an instance of us saying these are the strategies we put in place. These are the results after a week, and we're going to continue to update you, and we are happy to continue to do that, but we're also very serious about increasing our interventions if we're not continuing to see that downward trend.
Where are we on parental accountability? The chief's meeting with the attorney to discuss options. What are those?
Yeah, absolutely. Chief, I'll let you talk about that.
So we did have our first conversation with the City Law Department on parental accountability. When we look at the current state legislation, there are some hurdles to get over. It's not as easy as just saying, why didn't you know where your child is or what they were doing, and now you're going to be charged with something. There's other things that have to come into play. So what we're going to do is work with the Law Department on specific incidents involving juvenile crime and what we have as an investigative packet to turn over to the prosecutors and determine whether or not there's enough there to file the charges on a parent. So this is not going to be a blanket approach. It will be very, very specific to particular incidents. But we have not charged any parent yet, and you guys will know when we do. But my ask is still, parents, know where your kids are, know what they're doing, and know who they are with.
And that's both the city law enforcement and prosecutor's office you're working with?
That would be the city prosecutor's office.
Chief, real quick, can I ask about the parking assessment program? When will the public be able to find the results of whatever the surveys show? I think a lot of people are interested in knowing the safest place to park.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do not have a date for that right now. I know that they are working through the logistics of the problem-solving project that would get us to that end that you're talking about.
Do you think they could put a target on those parking lots? Because a lot of people are parking there, so people know where there's going to be a lot of cars.
So that would not be what our goal is, but if I was a parking lot owner, I'd want to step up my game so that my lot is not a target.
Well, in addition to grading, there's two different flows of work that's going on. So there's the grading and assessment of the parking lot, but we're also looking at the parking lot licensing program that is technically on the books. And the goal for that is to make sure we're working with city parking to also assess how many staff members, for instance, current surface parking lots have, what is the landscaping that's as a deterrent for safety. So those are two different things that we're working on at the same time to try to make sure that the other works with so one works with the other program.
Chief, I want to go back to this idea of, you encourage folks to report suspicious behavior. I know in this specific incident, you said you're not sure what the reported suspicious behavior is. I just feel like this brings up concerns about racial profiling and people reporting, people for completely innocuous behavior, and yet now there's a drone over their head recording everything they do. Are there not concerns about racial profiling in this?
Thanks, Becca. Our goal as, and I'll of course invite the chief up next. Our goal as a city is, of course, to make sure that we're using modern policing techniques and continuing to live up to the values and priorities of the collaborative agreement. That is absolutely and continues to be our North Star. We are in a challenging situation, in part because of the gun laws in the state of Ohio that allows everyone, no matter what you look like or where you're from, to openly carry a firearm unless you have been convicted in the past. And that creates an incredibly challenging situation for our police, particularly right now in times of crime surges. And so we have a responsibility. If there is a citizen that calls us to complain about someone with a gun or someone doing suspicious activity, particularly right now in this crisis, to follow up with them and to see whether there's any truth to that. Now, in this instance, instead of sending a patrol officer, we sent a drone and could see that this person had a gun in our downtown area. And that
It is not a crime to hold a gun.
no one has said that it's a crime to hold a gun, but it is concerning for anyone to be having a gun out in public, particularly right now. And so we have a responsibility to protect our citizens, of course, being mindful of the values that we hold dear here in the city of Cincinnati, but we have to be able to, as police officers, when someone reports suspicious activity that is then confirmed by a drone showing that the person has a gun, to follow up and see what's happening. And in this instance, we found not just a gun, but a gun with a Glock switch that turned it into an automatic weapon. We have to do everything we can to get those guns off of the street to prevent violent crime and more people dying. And I will continue to back up our police officers as they continue to use technology, as they continue to follow up on residents' concerns. If there are instances where we have crossed the line, I will be the first to say that is inappropriate and that violates our values. But particularly in the instance that we just showed, getting a Glock switch firearm that is illegal on the streets off of the street is absolutely justified. Chief.
If I may, very quickly, every day, every single day in this city, we're doing everything we can to make sure Cincinnati is safe. We are in America, and there's been a problem with profiling. There's been a problem with equal justice before any of us were here, and there's still a problem with that. Having said that, though, we are trying to make sure we turn over every rock possible to make sure this city is safe. Cincinnati police are miles ahead of other major cities when it comes to equity in policing. I did it with Cincinnati police for 33 years. We are miles ahead. We're going to stay miles ahead. But we can't allow one particular incident that doesn't look like something was wrong to dictate the pace of this city. We got to continue to work hard. We got to continue to be innovative, and we got to continue to do everything we can. And the drones are a huge tool in the tool belt to help us get this city to where it should be. All hands on deck. We're going to try everything, but first and foremost, our police department is going to always respond equitably and with justice and fair treatment. We all want that. We're miles ahead of other cities. We got work to do in Cincinnati, and we're going to make sure that work is done. Thanks.
I just want to add a little something to that response to your question, Becca. You guys heard me a couple weeks ago say, I expect these officers, not just the task force, but all officers, follow their training, follow our policies, and follow our procedures. Now, I'll get into a little bit of verbiage you guys may not be familiar with. These officers are trained extensively. They know what reasonable suspicion is. They know what a non-consensual stop is. And they can do all of that while still staying within the realms of constitutional policing. That's what they go out there and do every day. That's the expectation, and that's what I support them doing. All right?
Thank you all.
Oh, well,